Let's
Welcome
go.
to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. I am pumped for this. I was thinking about it, and we haven't had an actual Q&A session for, I don't think we did one last year at all. And so probably since the beginning, I'm pumped for this. We got some very interesting questions coming up here, and I am stoked. So while I am stoked, y'all should be stoked too. Be doing the things, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all the good stuff, get your emails whenever we go live, which is of course Fridays for The Collective and Wednesdays for The Gold Mine. We don't have to go through any intros, but Sean's here sipping his coffee. How's life in the mountains again?
Things are good. You know, it is good out here, of course, but it was good back there, back in Cardston, back at Seb's place. So I think, one of the great things about going on these kind of, call it a retreat for lack of a better term, going somewhere else just long enough to get a proper feel for a place can help contextualize sort of where you live and maybe where you want to live or who you want to live with, these kind of things. It's good.
Yep. I was thinking on the way home that it really sucks to drive away, but as I was rolling back into my house, I was just like, man, I really enjoy where I live. It's nice to be home and back with your own stuff. We got a whole bunch of people.
So you got questions, but I'm into it. I really am. I'm stoked. I don't even know what the questions are, but if you're going to say something and a thought pops into my head, I got to say her. So
hit it.
It is important, like that consideration, what you just said, it's hard to leave such a great group of people that, challenges and kind of to some degree reshape how we view things. And as you drive away, it's like, oh man, I still want some more of that. But you're going back to to some degree a better place. And so, I think that's also an important aspect of if you just want to stay there, like in that, let's call it for what it is, to some degree, a temporary moment that can impact you for the rest of your life, of course. But that temporary moment, as it goes into, your rear view mirrors, you're driving away, you should be driving towards something maybe better, or driving back to your baseline, or driving back to your foundation, or driving back to your, however you categorize it. But it shouldn't be oh no, it's in the rear view mirror and that's the best thing in my life, and now what? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you shouldn't need a vacation from your own life, really.
That's right.
Yeah, you should enjoy what you're going back to, and that's a beautiful point. I just wanted to hit up. We got a whole bunch of people joining right away. Annie Oakley's watching, firefighter Amp. That's Michael coming in from Kingston. Rise for Adversity's here. Dan Cameron, Annie Oakley jumping in with a bruh, and Rivas Frank Torres, Nick Fury's on here. That's awesome, and of course Salty's here. Good day, Chant, Sean, all good to see you. The trip was amazing. But I was so happy to sleep in my own bed, hang out with my wife, be with my family, all the things that I loved. And
dude, I was happy that you were back to your own bed because you snore.
Yes, I do. I figured I'd leave that as a special for you. I didn't want to give you a heads up or anything. Just get a surprise in the evening.
That's
the way to
Thank
do
you
it.
very much.
No problem. I'm here to help. So, yes, if there are any other questions, anything at all you guys want us to talk about, let us know, and we can engage throughout the show. If you're watching on the YouTube or anywhere Twitch style, you can type it in. The Instagram side I can hit as well. Tyler Pelkey's here. Good to see you, Dom Duke. Good to see you. This is awesome. So I got the first question right off the bat.
Okay.
Which I'm interested to see what you have to say about, because it was it could go in many places. So here we go.
Let's go.
Has your gut instinct or little voice ever warned you of danger?
Yeah, lots of times.
Yeah,
so many times that I don't even doubt it. And so, I think that's the thing is if you're answering the question to yourself right now as to your own gut instinct, whoever's listening to this, and you are thinking yeah, I think it has. You just haven't listened to it enough, or you just haven't faced enough danger, I suppose. And so if you haven't faced enough danger, then good, congratulations, you've lived a life that isn't filled with danger. But I think there's tons of jobs out there that are fraught with danger. As I was driving back from Cardston to Rossland, the weather was not great, and there's big trucks on the road, and these mostly guys, but of course there's the girls out there driving truck. They're facing more danger in that career than a lot of careers that are considered quote unquote dangerous. And so I think something that I'd like to maybe throw out there, maybe bounce it off of you, Chance, or if anyone's, if someone's listening to this right now and you have thoughts on it, like bam, hit it in, punch an immediate comment into what I'm about to say. I think that there's jobs out there that are labeled or categorized as that's a really dangerous career, but statistically, it actually isn't that dangerous. The danger is being mitigated or managed through a support system that's all around them, like artillery and all of that good stuff, air, fast air. And so, yeah, it's all dangerous, but statistically, how dangerous is it? How many people are dying in trucking accidents in the trucking industry versus in like a hardcore career that's maybe labeled the military? So then, move that to deep sea oil rigs. How dangerous is that? How dangerous is dot, 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 and all of these careers that are out there? Dudes up in Alaska in the bonkers weather pulling in fish and like the flippity flopping over the edge of the boat and then being, pulled back, 10 times in a day, just barely surviving. Statistically, I think there's a lot of things out there that are not considered dangerous, but they're freaking dangerous. And so that's what I'd like to throw out on that.
This is a fascinating thing, and I love the concept of statistical danger, because I think it's tens of thousands at least of people die on the road every year just from driving. And yet it's considered quite safe because, I mean, when you look at the statistics, how many people are driving, how much time is spent on the road, blah, 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 blah. They say, airplane crashes are rare, so it is one of the safest modes to travel, technically. But do you think perhaps it has something to do with the amount or the violence in which it takes, the violence in which it enacts in such a small period of time that changes
Yeah.
how we think about it?
Yeah. I mean, like the idea being, geez, who was it that we just had on? Wrong. I was listening to a podcast, and we've got to get him on the show, by the way. I meant to give you the heads up. First name Heath. I've forgotten his last name. He was on Travis Bader's Silvercore podcast. And I think it's the most recent one that just dropped. Anyway, before I left, Cardston Seb said to me, "Hey, you got to listen to this podcast. I think you'll really like it. The guest is an excellent speaker. He et cetera, et cetera." And so if Seb's going to green light it, then I'm into it.
Yeah.
And so, which is another fascinating thing that we could bounce into, by the way. So I'm listening to this podcast, and it's not quite 2 hours long. And I mean, right from the get-go, I knew that the guest was an engaging speaker. But his life story, in a sense, there's some parallels to his life and many people that I know who've had similar lives or similar challenges. But then once he gets into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, I started to realize that, situational awareness is something that can be taught to you as a young kid, as he got taught situational awareness. But then at one moment, he was racing down the road on his motorbike and his flip-flops and his you got to listen to it. And as I was listening to it, I was like, oh, bro, no. And sure enough, some younger people in a car kind of pulled out, and he describes it, so it's not like I'm making things up. Pulls out, and the driver kind of sees him bearing down on him super fast, and the driver kind of just locks up the brakes, like covering a good chunk of the road. Anyway, the guest smokes into the car. The bike goes under the car. He rams it. And I'm not going to list all of the injuries that he got, but
Extensive.
they were significant.
Yeah.
And so here's the deal. Like, where did his situational awareness go in that moment? Where was he like 10 seconds prior? Why was he in flip flops? I mean, I rode motorbikes for 13 years, the fast bikes, and there's never a day in my life when I had flip flops on, ever. And so, situational awareness, he was taught it as a young man, and and in his career path, he was being taught it. But at some point, in a moment of, I don't know, lax state of mind, he just decided that, yeah, I'm just going to get after it in my flip flops. Now, life changes in a situational awareness moment. I think that's an important aspect of life is danger is all around you to some degree. If you walk out your door on your phone and as you're stepping down your front steps, you're so concerned with Candy Crush that, you misstep and now you're in dental work or now you're in brain surgery. And so life to some degree is risky if you don't have good situational awareness.
I could not agree more. I've been around more accidents that were, and I say accidents, but they were basically just complacencies.
Mhm.
It was two complacent people interacting in a very negative fashion, usually with a car crash or some sort of random occurrence. I tripped and then I fell into X, and like now I have things protruding from my body. Like weird stuff happens in life, and it can in an instant. And I could not agree more with that. Now, um, before I just got some people I want to hit up here. Spicy Camper joined
Do
in,
it.
said, "Hey, Chance, good to see you." Dom Duke asked a really great question here, and I want to hit right on that one. So, also, oh man, there's a whole lot of people in here, and I'm loving it. Lisa
Oh,
Flynn Meyer, happy Friday, happy Friday, everyone. Good to see you all.
hey, happy Red
Jay
Friday.
L,
Let's get it
Red
straight.
Friday,
Happy
that's right.
Red Friday,
Boom, look at that.
dude.
JL's on here. Greetings all. Good to see you. So, Dom Duke, as I move towards my 50s, life has spoiled me with health, family, personal, and professional goals. Lately, I question my relation with owning material stuff. What's your relation with owning things? What do you think?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I actually talked about that during the week that I was in Karsten, just with a couple of guys. One of them, Satch's friend who attended. I was going to say attended the retreat. It was never
Kind of
organized
was.
as a
It
retreat.
kind of was, though.
It kind of was. Well, that's what it kind of turned into.
Yeah.
But in my mind, before any of this kicked off into sort of quasi retreatdom, like I was just jumping in my car, driving to my friend's place to crack out a world class book. That's what I told myself. Simple terms, simple mission. Let's go. I know there's a lot more complexity to that simple statement, but the point is, the moment I arrived, I had no idea that people were going to be showing up like that, which was freaking awesome. So it did kind of turn into a little bit of a retreat. My point being that Glenn, who was with Satch, we kind of got into a little bit of conversation about the trappings of buying the life instead of earning the life. And so my position is this: that anything of value in life, you've got to earn the hard way. So if someone buys you like an Omega Sea Master, dangles it in front of your nose, drops it in your lap, and says, "You're the best," and then moves right along, and you didn't even shed a drop of sweat on that. So where's its value? The value then becomes, I don't know. There's many ways we could take that conversation, um, and I'm not even going to go down those paths. What I am going to say is that what I have on my wrist represents many things, and I've had it on my wrist for like, I don't know, nearly 35 years. And so it's a tool to some degree. It's got me in a lot of meetings. It's got me through a lot of doors. It's got me a lot of handshakes. It's kind of, as the person has seen me, they might look at my scrubby self, like start quickly assessing that who's this scrub walking towards me. And then as I kind of reach up to adjust something, they'll see they'll see the label. They'll see the meaning or whatever the case is, and then bam, somebody's context can change really quickly. And so I think the trappings of sort of pursuing wealth objects or to display to the world that you represent a certain thing, that's got to be done really carefully. And so when I purchased this, it was with intent. I knew why I was buying it. And so I think, to answer this question succinctly, I got no problems with someone having luxury or comfort or buying nice things for themselves. Not at all. I think I have an issue with someone who doesn't do these things thoughtfully or with intention as they're considering purchasing it. And then once they've got it, how they treat it. Does the object own you, or do you own the object? And then further, and perhaps this is the most important piece, and I'm interested in what you think. I buy this watch with intention. I own the object. And then a year later, I'm like looking for the next object. Like,
Mhm.
so did I not shop correctly? Did I not think deeply enough to assign what I wanted? Now, do I have 27 watches? Every day I'm like a different guy with a different intention. Okay, that's a thing for sure. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. What I am saying is if you carefully calculate what's important to you, and then when the wind changes, it's now in a drawer, and it was never important. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
What do you think?
I think it's interesting because I look at skills in the same way too. And when you were talking about the watch and it opening doors and something like that, it reminded me of my wife and I have had this conversation about golf. In that it's not really a skill set that you would use outside golf, but to be able to play golf is one of those things that opens doors. Like to be able
Oh yeah.
to go in and be able to handle a round of golf with people and converse and so on and so forth. So there's a skill to it, right? Kind of like debate or some of the other or softer skills, but those things are important. And if you learn them with intention, then you can use them to benefit your life. You can use them to do things in life that you've wanted to do. But if you just learn golf for the sake of, you might love golf. I'm sure there are lots of people out there that do, but the it, to use it with an intention, like you're saying, there are lots of people that collect watches and they love collecting watches, and that's their thing, that's their jam.
Yeah, for sure.
But to say, I don't know, I think there's a lot of allegory to just general intention of what you're doing anyway. You're spending time buying the watch. You're spending time learning how to do set skill. How is it you're absorbing in
Let
your life?
let me throw something your way because it's kind of funny. Seb said it, and it made me laugh because it's true. So you know that I'm on my like 7-year-old laptop right now. That if I had my way, I'd turn it into a frisbee and just chuck it straight out my office window. And I've been
You could.
I know, dude. I know. Sometimes I want to, but so I've been hunting for a replacement laptop for a while now, like a, long enough that we'll call it a while. And so what I try to carefully do is understand what's best in the world, what's the worst in the world, what's the sweet spot where I can spend a certain amount of money where I feel like I'm getting my value and it gives me enough ability so that I'm not the limiting factor. You know what I'm saying? That my aims are being met with the tool, and then it just gives me enough slush factor that I can kind of grow into the tool, as it were.
Mhm.
So, so I've been hunting laptops, and of course, I brought in a laptop. I purchased a laptop, and it was like best in class at what it did. And the laptop was so kind of bleeding edge or cutting edge that like it had all kinds of issues, driver issues. I was getting blue screens of death. Like if I looked this way, I'd look back and it'd BSOD'd, and then I'd be like, what? And then it'd triple BSOD. So as a computer system engineer back in the day, I fought that laptop tooth and nail for a week. And the things that I had to do to try to make it work are like kind of sort of highly advanced, sort of like I'm trying to save the planet sort of stuff to make this laptop work. And like I fought it, man. And here's the interesting aspect. At some point, I was trying to make the laptop work for the show, as it were. But then in a split second, it was then me versus it. Like, it's not that I was trying to make it work. I was like, oh no, you didn't. Oh, if we're fighting, I'm gonna win. And you know what? It won. What it did was it sucked a bunch of life hours out of me, a bunch of life energy. I'd be like up till 4 o'clock in the morning trying to make this bad boy work, and it beat me. It just refused to work. So, I sent it back to Best Buy, got my refund, full refund, and then I'm back on my old cronky old laptop again. So, there's lessons in that, which maybe we won't dig into. However, I'm out at Seb's place and I pull out my laptop. I said, dude, like, I'll just be happy if this laptop lasts the full 10 days that I'm out here.
Yep.
And and he laughed and said, well, when are you going to get a new one? I said, you know what's going on right now? Because of the current political situation and because of the tariffs that are in place, like some of the laptops that I've identified that I wouldn't mind having are actually not being shipped to North America right now because those laptop manufacturers are kind of boycotting our continent. And I'm like, the ones that I want can't even be shipped right now. Do you know what he said? He said, trust Sean Taylor to shop so long that there's actually a global change.
Oh man, that is so accurate.
I shop for my camera that's just over here for like nearly 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a bunch of cameras that came up and went and came up and went. I have my way. I am intentional about why I purchase and what I purchase. So that's food for thought out there. I hope that kind of bounces around Dom's question. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm gonna throw something else at you here, and it's to this point, and then we're gonna get to some of these other questions here. But there is a point where I think it becomes paralysis by analysis, and I don't perhaps mean you, although it could apply to you as well.
Not to me.
In
no.
That, but
no, I don't accept it.
I think
I have my process.
I know your process is your process, but I think that there is a point where you're getting diminishing returns because the amount of time you spent looking for said camera, you were using a less adequate camera, which means that you weren't putting out the awesomeness that you are. Like, you're putting out the awesomeness now, but it really depends on whether or not what you can produce out of said item is equal to the amount of time that you have put in work effort, like searching for it. So
I love it.
For some things.
So let's just touch on that for a sec.
Okay.
My process is my process, and it isn't for everyone. What I actively try to do is deny myself what I want.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I want, but it can't come too easy. Like, it's got to be a freaking bonkers struggle for me to like assign value to the process.
Yeah.
And so for sure, I mean, you could ask my wife. Like, I was a handful when I wanted a new camera, but because I'm not getting a new camera, I'm like, I'm a bit irritating to be around because I know what I want, but I also know that there has to be a lot of tension for me. I need the tension between the thing I want and the thing that I've got. And so that has to exist for long enough that when it's time to pull the trigger on the thing that I actually wanted for 2, 3, 4 years, when I get it, I don't just hold it in my hand and think, oh, cool, I'll just put that up on the dusty old shelf again. And so it's not for everyone, this act of, I don't want to call it self-denying the thing that you want and even the thing you need. I do appreciate trying to make things happen with the sort of janky old apple cart that has been duct taped together and the wheel's a bit wobbly. You know what I mean? I kind of like
I get
that,
it,
man.
It's got character. I get it.
It
is. But there's a point where, like, if this were to crash right now, if your computer were just to die, you'd have a new computer tomorrow. I know you'd just be like,
yeah, I'd probably be running.
Like, it requires one, right?
I'd be running the show off my phone.
Yeah,
that's what I would do.
Well, and they are little mini computers at this point now, anyway. So
I have a plan B.
Yeah, and if that goes out, then you'd have to go out and buy. Like, if the world ended tomorrow, right? You'd have a plan to figure it out, but it would be done very quickly. But while this still works, we're hanging out, still doing our stuff.
You already made the point though, and it is super important, and I recognize it. And I do have to clean up my act to some degree, and maybe we'll get into that later in the show. But you've already said it. I kind of threw away to some degree a couple of years of stuff for the collective, where if I would have had a good camera, if I would have had a good thing, if I would have had better this and that, if I would have looked better, if my ears weren't so big, all of these things that I could have like addressed instantly, then the show as a whole might be more successful, or at least people would be less irritated with my janky setup. So, you know, you're right. All of that is true. And the tension between that understanding and the fact that anyone who knows my rhythm, or actually knows me at a deeper level, they will accept that I'm just like that. I I know what I know that I'm trying to be better for the show, but my way of demonstrating how I do that is just by being me.
Yep.
And it's a bit quirky, I know, but that's the way I've always been, I suppose.
And I'm down with it. I got
Yeah.
no issues with it. I mean, we were chatting down in Cardston about similar stuff, and I don't know how many people were joking the fact that you just couldn't turn it off because, like, anybody that showed up, you'd be like, "Oh, and how's this? And
Eh,
what are you eating? And hey, man," like you'd be right into your
that's
process with
that's right.
everybody. And
Yeah.
yeah, I loved
To
it. I loved
the degree where Alex, of course, as I threw up in my Instagram post there just a couple, 3 posts ago, whatever it was, you look like a mad scientist. I mean, she was the one who called me a mad scientist, but she's not the only one. I mean, there was a half dozen people that referred to me as the mad scientist. And then I had all kinds of other labels that most of them were pretty nice, but some of them were a bit dodgy. And so I'm okay. I'm good with that. But I think it is interesting that, man, if you aren't getting some sort of wild label, like if you walk into a room and everyone looks at you and you're just like, oh, it's another dude, but
it.
it's not like, hey, it's that dude. I don't want to be, hey, I don't want to be that. But I think that if that's the way people are reacting, it's better than like not existing.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's better to be the dude without wanting to be the dude.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And that's but it's nice at the same time when people light up when you walk into a room. When people are like, "Oh, sweet, hey man, how's it going?" And they like
Yeah.
want to be there. Um, yeah, could not agree more with that. I think it goes aligned with a lot of service-based mindsets as well, in the fact that we want to be of service in some way, even if that is through conversation, or if it's through help, or hey man, I could use your help, and that kind of idea. Um, but
But
it's
not
nice to be
but
wanted.
not with the label of, oh, you want it,
Yes,
or
yes,
oh, you're
yeah,
I'm the dude. I don't want
yeah,
any of that.
yeah,
I'd just
yeah,
rather put my hands in, my jam, put my hands in my pocket, lean against a wall, just freaking
yeah.
chillax.
Sit in the
Let's
back.
just have a coolio moment. But you know,
Yeah, it's very hard to do that next to you when you're like, so what you need to do is eat more protein.
I know.
Like the knife hand comes out, and it is amazing. Now I just want to see if this is going to work, because I got a presentation. I'm going to see if I can present the Instagrams. No, that's not going to work. All right, cool. So Dan Cameron jumped in here and said a little bit earlier, another avenue to looking at the world's most dangerous job is by choice, or the world's most dangerous job to subsist and survive, which is an
That's a great
interesting way to
point.
go with that on, right? Then we got Clay's jumped in here. B Jordan 729, good to see you. The real Adamo. Nick Fury's laughing at our jokes, our stories. Dom Duke, thanks, folks. Interesting answers. Good to see you, buddy. Lisa Meyer is also jumping on here while listening at work. Good to see you. So I have more questions, but I want to hear more about the ranch. You asked this one, actually. No, man, there we go.
All right.
Chance's favorite moment in Cardston. But what I want to know is yours, because you had
All right.
quite the experience, but I'd like you to break it down. Give me the one. What do you think?
Yeah. So I haven't. When you asked that question, I gave it like zero thought for what was my favorite moment. But actually, this is one of them. And so for anyone who can maybe tease out the details of what's going on here right now, I said, "Hey, let's get a photo of the two of us, and let's get it behind the couch because I want to like illustrate the difference of height between the two of us. Because like Chance is like 8'4" and I'm 4'9", and so I wanted to like visually represent that, and in a way, it maybe it's self-deprecating, or maybe I'm having a little bit of fun at my own expense, or at your expense, or our expense, whatever the case is. But I think what's key to this moment for me is it's fun. We both get it, but you should be able to do this. Like
Yeah.
you should be able to not like artificially craft this moment because we didn't talk about it. I said, I got a 10-second delay. Just stand there. Let's go. And then this is what popped up. But that's just both of us being comfortable enough with who we are. I mean, you can see it in your face,
Yeah.
like you're loving the moment. I'm loving the moment. And we're both happy to share the moment, like kind of authentically
Yeah.
while still like teasing ourselves. And to me, that's, what I'm like, pal. I am a relentless teaser. I tease the world. I
Yeah.
poke and prod and chip and chirp, and it's got me in lots of trouble, of course. But I'm still here, so bring it. I like to be able to have some fun with the moment when I'm around cool people, and so even with people that I don't know very well, or I haven't spent enough time around them, and we've spent a ton of time together, of
Yeah.
course, digitally. You can step up in about 3 seconds. I'm looking for a way to have a bit of fun with the moment, and it doesn't work for everyone. It
Yeah.
doesn't work for everyone, and so I think that's one of my favorite moments about the week in Cardston is that representation of everyone who was there knows my jam. And they know that I'm a relentless teaser and poker and chipper and chirper. So it's nice that everyone kind of calibrates with that or will accept that, or I accept it of me. So you've got to accept me as such. And so that is a favorite moment for sure.
Yeah. It was I think that was my favorite moment too, and very in a very similar way because it was just, hey, we need to get a picture, stand right there. No, back up, left, right, okay, stay there. And then you just ran in. And it was just like it was one of those moments. And but that I mean, you got to spend what, like 12 days there. I was there for two
Near
and a
10.
half.
Yeah,
And like it was a series of those moments throughout.
for
So it's
sure.
really hard to like pick any one particular one.
Let
But
me so
yeah.
so let me give you let me play off of that for a sec. So there's tons of single moments, but then there was we'll call it a body of work
Yep.
that is more representative of all of those single moments. And so one of the days that I had, and you will full well understand this, how kind of hammering it can be. I Seb and I recorded 3 chapters for the book in one day. So
Yep.
that's just like 6 hours of talking into microphones back and forth to each other to create sort of the framework of the chapter. But before we started talking into that mic for those 6 hours, there was a ton of work that had to be done before the first word was spoken. So just the verbal aspect of 6 hours represents, 60 hours of work. But
Yeah.
then that same day, you and I did a 2-hour podcast.
Yep.
And then that same day, I also did another 2 hours of work on the newsletter. And then that same day, I had videos from the day. I had people who were shaking hands and we're all hanging out. And now we're by horses, and now there's a mountain in the background. Do you know those photos don't do themselves?
Yeah.
And so, like all of I'll call them responsibilities, but they're not true responsibilities. They're just things that I'm engaged in. That was a 21-hour day. And what did I
Mhm.
get to do? I got to like finish off that day at about 2 o'clock in the morning as I listened to Chance Burrell snoring. And so in the room we were sharing. And so it's not the snoring aspect
Yep.
that's a part of this story, because that is actually like that's the good stuff. That's the cool stuff to me. And so that was a long freaking stonking hard day, but
Yep.
nearly every day was like that. And so what's it all about? What is it all about? I come away from that period of time thinking, man, I am empty. I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. In fact, how about this? And I was going to let the slavers know this weekend. The moment that I got home, I jumped on a scale and I'd lost nearly 5 pounds because I was freaking going hard, man.
You were
That's a
burning it
turbo week for
at
me.
like
I hit the
four
big
ends, not
red
just both.
button and it's
Yeah.
like, it's game on.
Yeah.
Every single second that I'm engaged in whatever's in front of me, it's go time, baby. And even if it's a chillaxed conversation and I'm using just a chillaxed tone, the old peanut is whirring at warp factor 3. And so the largest organ in the body for energy bleed is the brain. You can burn down 20 points, 20% of your calories in a day just by thinking a little harder. Well, I was like maximum effort. And so my brain skinnied me up from the amount of sort of cerebral engagement that I had. And it was all good, but it's fun to like go hard on a week like that and see some real good results, but also know that there's a cost. And so is the price you pay worth the outcome? And to me it is.
Yeah.
And so how I know that is because throughout my life, whenever I've gone hard on as a serial entrepreneur, anything that I've gone hard in, if I freaking go hard, I start to see results for me and others. And so I love being able to go hard. I don't like losing near 5 pounds, but I love going hard because I know it's worth it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's what we did with the collective. And we
That's
went
right.
hard right off the bat.
Hard.
And it's like, okay. And that was a cerebral burn rate of magnitude.
It was.
That one went wild. Salty Jink jumped in here. He said, "It's funny you're both standing in that that photo." I feel you, Sean. So he gets it. Fantastic.
I was crouching down a little bit.
just, just, just a touch. Tyler Pelkey jumped in here on the other side. Said the best moments are being mindful and in the moment, and it's absolutely true. There was a moment I was sitting on the back of Seb's horse, and sitting in my saddle that I'm letting them use for the horses, and looking at the mountains and just hanging, just being cool. And man, that moment doesn't happen very often. And then later on, I got to see a friend of mine who I have not seen since I retired from the military. And later on, I got to do and it was just like, it was a body of work. It was an unbelievable weekend for me, let alone 12 days for you. I don't know where to go.
So you know what is really cool is that if a person shows up at Seb's place and gets an opportunity to ride the horse and they're riding along and they're looking in the mountain, they see what they see and they feel what they feel, and that's all good. That's 100%, 10 out of 10. However, I do love a little game, the game within the game. And you freaking played a little game within the game in my direction. So
Yes,
there
indeed.
I was in Seb's office on the microphone, recording material for the chapter. And who was prancing around like he was on a circus pony, back and forth in front of the window, looking all large and in charge? Chance Burrows. Intentionally, because he knows that I'm looking out the window. What? And so I love the game within the game. And so I do
Yeah.
appreciate a person who can be in the moment, accept it all for what it is, while at the same time having just enough personal agency that you don't get lost in the moment. You
Yeah.
can still play with the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's important
Yeah.
to me.
I was having quite a bit of fun with it. And I was like, in multiple ways, because I knew you have the mindset of a photographer or someone who wants to capture a moment. And I was like, what moment would just send him wild? It's a cowboy riding along right in front of the chief, right out the
Oh,
window.
dude.
And then, asking you afterwards too, just like, oh man, how distracting was that? Was it fun to play with? And you never really gave me an answer. So I would love to hear how you process that moment of just like, oh my God. Oh my God. And then tried to and manage that moment. I know it wasn't that severe, but how
No,
did you process it?
well, it can be. It could be.
Yeah.
I could have let it be,
Yeah.
because if you're squirrel brained, now as a squirrel brain, you're like you're target locked on everything, and everything's a distraction. And
Yeah.
where's my camera? There's chance. Oh, now I'm on a microphone. What the heck am I doing? I think certainly for me, I have that ability to like rapidly identify all the targets that are out there and start doing all of the math on all of the targets. But I really have to center in the moment when I'm doing things that are incredibly important. And so that prioritization of I'm in this office right now to allow a book to occur from whatever is within me interacting with my friend Seb. This interaction right now that we're doing is literally the most important thing that I can do. Unless my family's in dire straits or there's some sort of issue at home, beyond that, I had categorized that other than my family, this book is it. And
Yeah.
you're all tertiary, you're all secondary. The whole freaking world outside of this office right now is second place to what I'm doing. And so I guess it all comes down to prioritization and the order of magnitude difference between what I need to do right now versus what I want to do right now. Make
Mm,
sense?
yeah, absolutely. And it actually goes right into this was sent in earlier from which we talked about. And he asked just specifically discomfort. And so I think what you're talking about bleeds directly into this because why most people get squirrel brain is they either get distracted, which is a level of non uncomfortableness in the moment a lot of times for people. And I know for myself, it is if if I'm really uncomfortable in a moment, I will look for ways to be distracted. I'll look for ways to get out of it. And
Hmm.
so I'm wondering your thoughts on the moment there, the discomfort of the moment of like, I need to do this. I want to do that, but I need to do that. Do the what I'm doing right now. What do you think?
Yeah, first of all, I think that's a great photo. It's a cool photo. I'm not sure who took it or where it came from, but I like it.
It was Seb took that photo of us when I was hunting. That's me on the
Okay,
spotting
cool,
scope.
cool. I thought that might be the case, but didn't want to dive into it. I think that discomfort is an interesting subject because the word only has as much meaning as the person who's given it thought to the word. And so, like you're standing at the bus stop and the wind's a bit chilly. It's blowing left to right, and it's kind of making the left side of your body a bit colder than your right side of your body. In that moment, you can say, man, it's freezing outside. Or you can say, well, at least one part of my body ain't freezing. And that's really it, period. And so, how much are you willing to accept based on your sensory understanding of what you're capable of? If, if, if you don't have any granularity in your life as to what discomfort means, it probably indicates that you haven't faced enough wide ranging discomfort. So, kind of on Friday, we were talking about this on the show, on the podcast with Brian, LAPD and US Coast Guard magnificence.
Mhm.
And we were talking about how the young folks that are under his command as they head to Hawaii for that training exercise, they're complaining about how they've got to eat gas food, and gas station food, and etc. And my thought was, okay, cool, you got to eat. How about you don't eat for 2 days, 3 days? How's the food taste on day 4? That's right. And so I also said during the week that we're in Cardston, just with a couple of different people, who are thinking about, well, not what's my meaning in life, or what am I supposed to do in this moment, but just a little bit of, and not whining, but just a little bit of, things have been pretty difficult over the last few weeks, the last few months, the last few years, etc. And I just looked the person straight in the eye and I said, have you ever heard of Viktor Frankl? No. So how's running around in a concentration camp with a a small crust of bread? How's that fit into your worldview? Have you ever considered that? what book are you talking about? And so if you haven't if you haven't experienced it personally, like the extreme levels of discomfort, then grab a book that can help teach you how wild the world can be when it comes to discomfort. I was lucky in my military career, or I self chose a trajectory that exposed me to fairly heavy doses of discomfort. And so, over a period of time, through that, not desensitization to discomfort, but the ability to modulate your understanding of discomfort, you got to do the hard things to understand what is easy. You can't exist in comfort and then one day you step into a little bit of a brisk wind and all of a sudden that's discomfort. What is discomfort is a raging tornado in your front yard. That's discomfort. And so I think it all comes down to context for me, and I think for everyone. What are your thoughts?
I I agree, and I before I get into mine, I want to know those watching. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Hit us up in those comments. Like, let us know what's going on because we want to hear from you as well. Um, I'll tell you, discomfort was sitting between you and Ash the other night, where you guys were both like
It's
laser
true.
focused on me, and holy cow, was that uncomfortable. But
Hey, talk about that.
okay,
I mean, you don't have to get into the details.
for sure.
I'm not saying you have to or don't have to. I'll retract that. Say whatever you want. All I'll say is this: that I think it's important for everyone out there to know about how at times you're uncomfortable. And it's also important for people to hear from me that at how I'm uncomfortable in certain situations. So it's not like we're freaking robots or we've got any secret sauce. We're just doing our best. And at times it's uncomfortable. And yeah, that moment was uncomfortable for you, but that was a moment that was created specifically or intentionally to create discomfort. Am I wrong?
No, absolutely was it, and it. I had stated multiple times through the weekend that it was so um, it was really great to be around people that pushed me at all times. It wasn't just a, "Hey, let's hang out and we'll be chill and it's all great." Every conversation we had was pushing the limit. Every time we talked, we were diving deeper into something else. And that particular moment, so for those that don't know, I had I had Warrant Officer Taylor on one side of me, and I
Which is
had
enough, by the way.
yeah, just a lot. And I had my friend Ash, who is I think he got out as a warrant as well with the
Which is enough,
RCRs,
by the way,
and
because
which is
I mean,
100%. He's intense
no
too.
doubt about it. Ash has
Yeah.
got the jam, you know?
Oh yes. And so I had them both, one on either side of me, and we were discussing some pretty intense, well, we're not going to say intense, but well,
Yeah.
well thought topics, and they're like both sides. Every time I would try to engage or disengage or change subjects, or I'd look one way or
Every
the other,
time
and
you tried to
it would just
duck,
be like
dodge, and dive,
there'd be knife hands in my face, and it was quite a bit. But um, to be able to sit in a position like that and actively learn, man, I took that as such a huge opportunity because
oh, yeah, you did.
I was just absorbing the information, constantly thinking about it, immediately trying to apply it to something else, and then iterate. And like it was uncomfortable, but man, it was a squaring up. Like every so often, you need to get squared up, put in the
Yeah.
hot spot, in the hot seat, and like we're gonna test you and see what happens.
So why it was uncomfortable is, as I said, you couldn't duck, dodge, or dive, but it was uncomfortable because I used a different pattern on you, or I did it a different way.
Yeah,
We don't need to talk about the details, but what I proposed to you, and then I said, your thoughts. I then just kind of sat back a little bit and turned into the hunting falcon and never said a word. Eyes locked, not mean mugging, not like trying to be a jerk, but it was like target lock. And there was never a word said by myself or Ash beyond that point.
yeah.
We were there for a while. Nothing was said as you were uncomfortably engaging in the silence. And I think that that's a fun little trajectory to come at it because that's not my usual MO. But the silence, the hunting silence in that moment is like super effective,
Yeah.
because then the person's got to be all up in their own grill, and you're not used to that from me, but
Hmm.
a dude's got to have a few tools in his toolkit to be able to manage the moment. And so it's good, I think, to pattern interrupt like that. What are you thinking?
I agree, and it's interesting because having had time to sit back and think about it and like break down what I was doing, I was actively engaging in the quiet in the moment as well, and I was. We talked about it afterwards. I was getting caught in minutia, but I
Hmm.
was I got into the minutia because I wanted to stop and think about it, because I wanted to actively engage in the question without just trying to immediately snap back.
For
Here it
sure.
is. And so I was like, well, let me stop and think. And then I got deep into the thought, and then I got down into the minutia, and then like it didn't require that in the moment, but it was fun to play with. And it was
It was.
a learning moment of quite a few magnitudes. Like, it just there was
I
so
agree.
much in there, and
I agree.
but that's between Sean and I from now on. Whoa. It's I do want to hit on a couple of these because we got some more comments in here. Dom Duke jumped in here. He said another suggested brainstorm. What's your mindset about the mind battles about the mind battling through discomfort, which I do want to touch on as well. B Jordan 729 jumped in here. He said, my dad was a World War II combat vet, including the Battle of the Bulge. When I was a kid, I complained once that I was cold, and he simply said, boy, you don't know cold. I took that lesson hard. Hashtag perspective. And to your point, and to B Jordan 729 dad point, there are levels to the game. If you want to know cold, that would be a place to know cold. You want to know cold, you go up to the Arctic. That's a place to know cold. You go to there are lots of places where you can figure that out in a much deeper manner.
So real quick, and we don't need to dive into it because I think it's self-evident, the point that was made by his dad. But that point is lost if he doesn't respect his dad.
It's true.
Like if you look at your son or you look at your daughter and you say, hey, listen, I know you're cold right now, but you don't understand cold. That message barely exists if the dad has never lived an adverse life or doesn't know discomfort.
Yeah.
And so if the only message you can pass on to your kids is, boy, you don't know cold. I just turned up the air conditioning in the truck one more degree. That's cold. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
if you're postulating that the sense of discomfort is through the modern lens of AC not working for half an hour, you know, how does anyone cling on to that? But if you can authentically relay the extremeness of a life that has faced great difficulty, then your kids can kind of look at you and maybe not respectfully, but at least open mindedly get that -70 is freaking cold and -3 is not. And so I guess it depends on how his dad sort of lived his life with him, but I'm guessing that he epitomized in that young boy's mind. Maybe my dad's a bit of a hero. I don't know. Maybe my dad is, and then that label becomes the key part. Because if your kids can, if your kids are labeling you as an average dad, whatever that means nowadays, then they're all average comments and they're all average interactions and now cold becomes just like the difference between 1 degree or 2 degrees rather than 100 degrees.
Yeah. And I mean, it's context, right?
It
Like
is.
you have to know what the Battle of the Bulge is and what happened there
That's
for you
right.
to understand why that even makes sense.
That's
And there
right.
are lots of people that don't.
That's right.
And thinking about that, when you look at you look back at a few things where you have your own kids, you start thinking about when you were kids, and you're like, my dad's can beat up your dad, my dad is stronger than your dad, blah blah blah. You have no context until all of a sudden you have context.
Let's see if you can see that on the watch here. Maybe on the back.
I can
There's a
see there's
little
an inscription, but I can't see what it
bullet.
is.
So let me read the inscription to you. Um, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but it references on the back engraved the Battle of the Bulge.
Mm,
And so this watch was designed specifically for a reason, as a nod towards the Battle of the Bulge crew. And so
yes.
the idea being that, just a very quick story, my son was talking to me about, he'd found a legend online, and he was like just blown away that this character had faced such adversity and come out kind of as a legend. And he said, yeah, and I think it was at a place called the Battle of the Bulge. And I said, just hang on a sec, let me get this watch. And as I showed him the watch, and I said, this legend that you're talking about right now, this watch was designed for him. As it says on the back on the description, the watch was sent to me because of that connection with the hardships or the adversity that certain people's lives represent. I'm not saying that my life has been that adverse, but the point being that when I managed to hold this up to my son and said, what do you think about that? This watch was literally designed for the guy that you are epitomizing as such. And his eyes went like, what? Really? Is that true? And so if if a generation sacrificed at the Battle of the Bulge, and then we forget their sacrifices, all of a sudden the context becomes this. Now you're in the McDonald's drive-through and they've just ran out of fries. And now inside the car, the adversity moment is there's no fries available, kids. You know what I'm saying? And
Yep.
so I think it's important, just as the case was with the dad's describing, you just don't know cold, son.
Yep.
These are things that we're supposed to pass along, not just as the legends of the Battle of the Bulge, but like within our own lives. We should be able to some degree, at a very small scale, demonstrate to the next generation that life is kind of a Battle of the Bulge moment, man. You either step up and kick that ass, or you step down and have the tank treads roll over top of you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I got to link up with a friend of mine I served with yesterday, and we went out for coffee and we started talking, and we got into AI and all kinds of stuff, and it was just a really awesome conversation. But we were talking about whether or not you need to be there to contextualize things. And so to this point, B Jordan 729 actually responded. He said, "My dad was and remains my hero for sure, absolutely," and as he should.
As you
The
should.
But when we were talking earlier, we're like, how do we contextualize what it is? Because we could read about the Battle of the Bulge, and we can kind of gauge, like, okay, yeah, it was cold, it was adverse, we didn't have the right gear, we fought against tanks, blah blah blah. We can read about that, but if you have never had any experience with that, it's just words, it's just numbers. It's hard to contextualize what it actively is unless you have something to contextualize it against. You and I both know what it's like to sleep and dig a and sleep in a trench, right? So when we hear about people digging in the cold and frozen ground, and we're like, oh yeah, yep, that sucks. Like, that's one. We know what it's like to be out in the cold in the field doing that stuff. But um, do you think that those that haven't experienced something similar can really integrate those lessons from reading the book? What do you think?
I think that, or at least my hope is that the commonality of life struggles can somehow be understood as I'm no different from you, and you and I are no different from our neighbors. We all have challenges. The difficulties in life, if it's a 10 out of 10 for me, it can be a 10 out of 10 for my neighbor, but our difficulties are just different. And so, there'll be things that my neighbor who's really good at a certain thing and I'm really poor at a certain thing. Well, now he's dealing with the problem at a 6 out of 10 and I'm dealing with the problem at a 9 out of 10. But it all comes down to the idea that whatever the problem is, you just got to freaking get on with it. You got to engage and you got to smash that thing into oblivion. And along the way, the 9 out of 10 becomes an 8 out of 10, and then the 7, and now you're a 6 out of 10, just like your neighbor, as it were. And the commonality of all of these little struggles is eventually you should be able to look people in the eye as they get older and kind of, I know it's going to put some people off, but kind of look them in the eye and respect them for the understanding that we've all faced these challenges. I think where it becomes a bit difficult is as I'm looking around for that commonality and respecting a person for the challenges that they faced. To me, the the gold of the moment is somewhat tarnished if they just start freaking whining too much. Like whining strips off the shininess of their body of work. And so we all whine. I mean, I whine. We all whine. But
Mhm.
when it's incessant whining or when it's relentless whining or when it's a pattern of decades of whining about the one thing that could have been addressed decades ago, now there's way less glint on that gold. It's tarnished so much that it's actually kind of covered in mud and undiscovered to some degree.
Mm. This is I think a consistent challenge because memories last a lot longer than the muscle memory of doing the thing, right? Because we both know lots of people that, and I want to ask you all out there. I'm sure you guys know people that they were the high school football captain and now they're 50, but that's what they remember. That's their level of adversity, and that was their hardest moment. And so I want to ask you this: what do you think was your hardest moment? And when you stop and think about it for a second, and the people watching, I want to know what your guys' moment was. What was your hardest moment? And then we'll talk about how we came out of it. What do you think?
Hardest moment in my life?
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, it's right now.
Mm.
Like the life I'm living in this moment, because hilariously, one of the things that I try to say is like just improvise, adapt, and overcome. Just freaking keep going, man. Keep smashing. Go kick that ass. Keep moving forward. Lean into it. Don't fall backwards and all of that good stuff. You've heard me say that a boatload of times.
Yep.
And so I've had lots of things that have happened in my life that have been difficult and have been challenging, been extremely like a real struggle. But like it's today. Today for me is a bit of a struggle because I'm less focused on the past and I'm more focused on the now. And the now is how to serve the greater world around us, you and I, the collective, all of us, how to just do it better, how to how to how to how to be better, all of us. And that consumes a lot of my now moments, a lot of my day to day. My existence at this moment is about that. And so my greatest struggle is the one that I'm in the moment, not the one that I was in 40 years ago.
Mm.
Those things were kind of like solved. Those things were kind of like moved through. And there's times when I move through them in a way that was rapid, but maybe not the right way or as effective or but I can't change that, man. Like those things, they're done.
Hmm.
And so those struggles are then. My biggest struggle is the one that I'm always in and realizing that this is all that matters right now. What we're doing right now as we speak, whatever we're doing, trying to do the good thing, that's my struggle. So I hold myself extremely accountable. I push the pace on myself harder than I push it on anyone else. And so I'm always trying to typically do more than I should in the moment versus just dial it back a little bit and let it unfold a little more organically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Dom Duke jumped in here on the Instagram said being present here and now every goddamn day is my battle to be a better human for myself, my wife, and my kids. And I think that's
Word.
exactly it. And I love how you put that because in retrospect, anything can really be hard. You can think about it back in the day and say, oh, yeah, that was my hardest moment or that was my hardest moment. But I mean, some of some of my hardest moments have been on this show. Some of the
Mhm.
hardest moments have been getting these things prepped up and good to go. And even now, maintaining the conversation and playing with all these things, like this is difficult. It's
It's
challenging to
supposed to
get through,
be.
and
It-
it's exactly it. It's
It's
supposed to be.
supposed to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I absolutely love it. Salty Jake jumps in here and said, "I still have people who like thumbs up when I hit bottom. My fight is to get people to see who I am now after all the work I've done and I'm still doing." Man, well, just so you know, we see you every day
Word. Yeah, for
posting your
sure.
things, and absolutely, we got you 100% here.
Yeah, well, listen, hey, screw those guys. If
Yeah,
they can't see what you're up to, Salty, whatever, man. Like, that's on them. What is on you, Salty, is doing exactly what you're doing. And I've been watching it. We've been watching it for a long time.
yeah,
And I've got high regard for the Salters because for me, it's not about how tall he is and how short I am. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got everything to do with, are you producing on the daily,
yeah,
consistently with a vision towards the future, whatever that is for yourself? You got to hammer on life. You can't be a passive participant in this journey. And so, Salty, freaking double thumbs up to you.
yeah. With little Shaka as
A
well.
little shocker, some shockage.
Yeah. We got MW Buds jumped in here and said, the hardest moment of my life was when I had to make a decision to dig myself out of the mostest days I've ever experienced. I'm not sure what that means, but it was that or fail. And I want, okay, I'm not really sure. You might have to figure out the wording on this one. I'm just not sure how it says. And I want about to fail. However, it was the hardest dang freaking thing. Yeah.
But
Corbin
the
Bobby,
best,
but also the best. Yeah.
whatever, hard, sure. Yeah, life is hard, but it's it's finding the glorious moment in all of that
Yeah.
to you might not know it in the moment, but I bet upon reflection, if you think of that moment as a branching point or a fork in the road, if you chose to suck even more, carry on. But if you chose to be awesome in a different direction, shoot up the fireworks. And so I've got all the time in the world for whoever's on the struggle bus, all the time in the world for someone who wants to hit the branch at that fork in the road and say, it's go time. Let's get better. Not, I'm buying into my own nonsense. Let's get worse.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, Corbin Bobby jumped in here. He said, "My hardest moment was when I left my military career, and that's a hard day. I mean, that the
Sure.
day that you hang it all up and you hand in all your stuff and you walk out the door, it is not an easy day. But to your point, Sean, that can be the day that is like, now I'm gonna freaking go even farther. Now I'm gonna go do something. Look at freaking Johnny Kim. Like,
Right. It's
what the heck?
ridiculous.
He's in space right now.
I know.
Like
Getting haircuts in
he's a
space. What the
freaking
heck?
he's a friggin' space doctor seal. Like,
It's
come on.
nuts.
Come
I
on.
know. But we
Leave
need
some
people like
awesomeness for
that.
the rest of
Listen,
us. Yeah,
I've
we
said
do.
it before.
Absolutely.
I need people like that.
Yeah.
I need these archetypes or these characters, these avatars, these humans that are just doing redonkulous things that I look at them and think, what the heck, Sean? Pick up the pace, you slacker. Pale in comparison to that dude's output.
Yeah.
But we need people like that. I need people like that for sure.
Yeah. I'm hoping that one of my long-term goals is to have Johnny Kim on the show because I would
Oh,
love
that'd be crazy.
to friggin' chat with him. That'd be wicked.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's
From
gonna get
space,
down from
man.
space and then
Come
oh
on,
dude.
whatever.
That would
Whatever's going on in space right now, it can't be that important. Come on the show, bruh.
yeah, a couple hours. It'll be no problem. Yeah,
No
I'd be
biggie.
hanging out with a
Space experiments, whatever.
Dave Curvin09 jumped in here. He said, I just want to jump on and say thank you to the both of you for hosting this podcast and for being the awesome dudes you are. You are changing lives for the better. You've both made a major impact in my life for the better. Thanks, guys. Well, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Appreciate that. And also, you make an impact on our lives. That's
Sure.
not just brush over that. It's the point of the collective is to collectively make each other better. And I think that's the key point of this, especially even with this particular day show. It's not just about us outputting to the world to try to boost everybody else up. This is all of us helping each other do awesome things every day. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
Right.
and as is my way. I mean, I got to stay true to who I am, like, and I got to like have a little chirpy McChirp moment. Like the moment that Dave Curvin and his wife Allie showed up at our house and here in Roslyn to stay with us for a handful of days, the first thing that I noted that I really needed to pick up my game was that tight haircut that Dave Curvin always has. Hey,
Always. Yeah, man. That thing
always.
is
I like I'm standing on my front porch like a scrub as they pull up in our driveway. I was like, I got to dial up my haircut game. So, everyone's got something to offer.
it's I appreciate a really nice high and tight, and man, he is like he is
Oh,
right
so
on
squared
there.
away.
MWD buds having some issues this morning. All good though. I think you get what's meant. Dark days were the toughest day for me, and pulling myself out was the only choice. Failure is not an option. Yeah, absolutely. It is a dark days are tough, man. And to that point, I have another question here
Hmm,
from one of the collective team here. Um, Him and I were chatting, and he was talking about how we kind of we've lost our heroes nowadays. So, you used to have these mythological heroes. We actually talked about this on the show the other day as well.
that's right.
Um, but what can the ordinary person do? I'm going to read it out here for you.
Okay.
Just some things that have been on my mind lately, and with you being a former soldier and all, how do you think we, the people, can bring world peace? And I mean, this is a big question, but I think it's an astute one. There we go. What do you think?
Hmm. I think that it's an excellent question. My first thought is this: that I don't think you need to be a soldier or you need to be, I think all of the labels that we categorize ourselves as it can all be dropped. I think it really comes
For
down
sure.
to how to create more world peace. You just got to be cooler, be a better person, not be such a jerk. And I know those are terms that are quite open ended, but literally, I think it comes down to, do you want to be Darth Vader or Obi-Wan Kenobi? And how much of that do you want to engage on the daily? Because you can walk out your door and think, okay, I'm going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi today. And then about 4 o'clock that afternoon, someone mean mugs you, or someone flips you the bird as you're in traffic, or whatever. Someone gets under your skin, and then what to do with that moment? A quick shift over to the Darth Vader moment to like square up the moment, and then switch back to Obi-Wan Kenobi. These little decisions on that sort of tripwire, or that tightrope that we walk of, am I being good or bad in this moment? Am I being cool or am I being a jerk in this moment? Listen, sometimes in my day I'm a jerk, but it's recognizing that I'm being a jerk and trying to do better. And so, I'm trying to do better. I'm probably a better person than I was last year, better than I was a decade ago, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I think is key to world peace, as it were, is get your own world in order, not just your community or your country. I mean, scale it way back to the thing that you can control, and that is, do you best right now. Don't outwardly focus on, trying to save your province. How about just save yourself for a moment? And I think that is part of the problem, that externalization of responsibility. I don't want to face my nonsense, so I'm going to fix the external problems.
Yeah.
And in so doing, like, you're just screwing it up even more because you're bringing your mean mug attitude. You're being a goof or jerk when you're doing it, and it's a road to ruin.
Yeah. I think back to, and I think why perhaps maybe the concept of a soldier or even police officer, or first responders, things like that. It's because we're forced from the very beginning to recognize that we have to sort out ourselves. We have to do all the little things for ourselves first so that we can then work on the team, so that we can then work on and that as a private, I mean, your responsibilities are take care of yourself. Like literally just take care of yourself. Just hold on to your gear, stay with the team, do the things we ask you to do. Um, and then later on in life, I mean, if you can't, it's kind of sad, but if you can't polish boots, I can't trust you with a rifle. Like it's hard to put those two things together, but they are absolutely applicable to one another. And I think to your point and to this question,
So,
well,
where it all falls apart is while you're in the military or while you're a private, or using this analogy,
yep,
if you're screwing up, now I'm stepping in as a
yeah,
warrant officer and making sure that things get squared up. But what we've got going on right now is people who've learned how to, do well within a military structure, as it were. But now they've got no one kind of hovering in the background as a sergeant or master corporal or as a warrant officer to square things up. We don't have that anymore. And so people have got a sense of personal agency, and I love that. But they feel that their sense of personal agency can now represent a worldview system, that they're
yeah,
just going to operate the way that they want, because at one point they learned how to polish boots and now they know how to polish the world.
for
But
sure.
in the army, if you'd screwed up your boots, now you're facing me.
Yeah,
If you go out in the world as a personal agency, now you're running your little world game. Who are you facing? No one, because you feel that you learned that lesson back in the day. And now you're just going to stomp all over the world because of your thoughts, but no one's holding you in check. No one's holding you accountable. And it's that accountability that is missing.
yeah.
There's accountability in the military. There is not accountability once you leave the military, as it were. And I don't know if it's a loose statement, but you get it.
No, absolutely. And what I was gonna carry on with there was the fact that it's by learning how to do that, learning how to take care of yourself, you can then apply those lessons onward. But if you don't even within the military, if you don't take the time to learn those lessons, then you're gonna leave the military and do exactly what you're talking about. You're just gonna run your program without any sort of accountability, or if you rely on that accountability, which is one of the things I did when I got out. I didn't realize that I had relied on the accountability process so heavily
Hmm.
until I got squared up by you and others who came in and was like, no, you need to absolutely run your own game as your own troop warrant, and you're going to have to square yourself away on a daily basis, which is,
Yeah, you got to be a private and a warrant in
yeah,
your
you got to be
life.
both. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, like, how did you forget that, or where did it go wrong, or what was the disconnect? You asked the question. Now I'm asking the question of you as kind of a proxy for the everyman. Like, how did it disconnect, and then how did it reconnect? That idea.
I would say the disconnect was I really believe it was the fact that I let my ego carry on. Like I figured I was good to go. I didn't
Mm,
need to be squared away. That everything I was doing was right, and to heck with everybody else. That was the big switcheroo, is because I went from being um, I didn't need to be managed when I was in the military because I was able to do all my stuff, and so I was kind of left alone. And I didn't need to be double checked and didn't need to be harassed. So when I got out, it was just that mentality moved forward to I must be good to go. I don't need to be
mm,
held accountable to what I'm doing because I'm obviously doing it right. And it wasn't until somebody took me aside and said, "You're not doing it right. Not at all. You need to really square yourself up." And you're one of those people.
mm.
And from that point, I was just like, "Well, what does this guy know?" He might know a couple of things. But that's the thing is, so to your point earlier, so before we even move on to, we were talking about B Jordan 729, you gotta respect the person who's giving you the
Right.
advice. That was the key, because there were other people who were telling me that, "Hey, man, like, maybe you're not going down the road that you should be going down." I didn't really respect them in the degree that I respect the people that did tune me up,
Hmm.
because I was able to accept their advice in that moment that, "Oh, yeah, perhaps they've been there," or, "I know they've been through more difficult situations," or whatever.
Right.
I can look at them with respect and then,
Right.
absorb that information versus not.
That, honestly, to me, is it. That is the secret sauce. And it's not the secret sauce when I interact with someone. It's not like I'm saying that I instantly command respect or whatever. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, for each person, you've heard me say that countless times, the right guy saying the right thing at the right time is what moves the needle. And so if I've got someone standing in front of me just chirping all day long, but they're not the right guy at the right time, I miss the message because of whatever, my own nonsense.
Yep.
timing is everything. And so put the right person in front of me saying the right thing at this time, then it can move my needle. And so, what is it about respect? And you don't have to use me as the example, but for you, what is it about respect as the sort of big needle mover? Where were you getting it wrong in regard to respect, and where did you kind of need to get it right in regard to expect or respect? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think this is it goes back to the question we just had here, which was, how do we bring world peace? We were talking about our own personal agency and being able to square ourselves up. It goes into you have to respect not only the people that are giving you the advice, you have to respect yourself that you are capable of doing what it is that needs to be done, because you are going to have to either change something or you're going to have to adjust something, and you have to have the self-respect to seek that betterment, I guess, is what I'm thinking. But um, there is a level of internal and external respect that has to kind of meet
Agreed.
in the middle there and go, okay, yep, good to go. And by doing that, by finding that self-respect and finding that external respect and trying to sync those up is what makes the world a better place. I think that is when the more people that are doing that are always constantly seeking to better themselves and the world, you can find those meeting voice interactions a lot
Yeah.
easier. So
Agreed.
yeah. We got comment Ruck and Rise podcast. Allie joined in here. Good to see you, Allie. She says, just so you guys know, Dave cuts his own hair. Of course he does.
Not a
Of course.
chance.
Then she asked, my question is, how do I become as badass as Doreen?
I'm still striving myself to meet her high standard, and that is a really important thing. I was thinking about that while I was out in Cardston. This is good maybe for Allie to hear, or um, I was going to say any other wives out there, but any other the ladies out there in context of the dudes. And so, like, we're a one car family, and so
Mhm.
when I left Rossland, I was driving our only car, and so there was no car at our house for 10 days. And there's just no way I would do that if I didn't think my wife was highly capable.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I'm gone for 10 days. I land in, I arrive in Cardston at Seb's place, and my cell phone provider is Bell. And in where he lives, my phone had like zero connection. It was emergency calls only. So if I'd have done a 911er, then maybe I could have got through. But other than that, I had no ability to use the normal lines of communication, voice or text or whatever. And and you know what? I had zero concern. Like Doreen didn't even know that I had zero coverage until a number of days later, where we just had to do a little thing. And I said, look, I've had no connection. She had no idea when I was going to be coming back. She had no idea what I was doing kind of in the moment on the daily. But that's not a concern for me. Like my wife is a big part of my success, a big part of my support network. Everything that I do is kind of built on her shoulders to some degree.
Yep.
But I need to be able to leave my house to head to Cardston and know that my patrol base here back in Rossland is good to go. And I know that. And so also when I'm returning back, I need to know that when what I'm driving back to is a place that I want to drive back to.
Yep.
And so, Allie's met Doreen. She knows what Doreen's all about. And she does not get nearly as much um, sort of recognition on the podcast, as it were, as to how critical she is to these things that I do. Critical.
Yeah.
If she wasn't freaking awesome, I wouldn't be able to do this. And so, and especially the way I am, like without someone kind of like, and I'm not saying looking after me, but someone who's kind of getting a grip on me to some degree, like none of this would be happening. So
Yep.
I need people around me that are better than me, are stronger than me, are more capable than me for me to feel like I'm in the right team. I hope that makes sense, Ali.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate for my wife as well. She is the foundation in which this whole thing stands, and if without her, this thing would not be happening in any way. It is she's put up with a lot, so I just want to say thank you, Curly. Super awesome to have on here. And Corbin Bobby jumped in here. He said, "Our wives are the pillars of our success," and they are. That is the perfect term, the pillars of our success. Um, Salty Chinks jumped on here and said, "Nothing wrong with cutting your own hair, Ellie." I think there's another one in here. Carvin Bobby said, "The collective is real conversations that level us up while facing several challenges, or just how to fine tune our pro mindset on a daily basis." And I really like that. The how to fine tune pro mindset. What are your thoughts on that? Fine tuning a pro mindset.
Yeah, well, I've I've as part of my coaching career, before I started podcasting, the 15 years that I was coaching high performance athletes all over the world, the moment that anyone like sent me an email saying, "Hey, I'd love to be coached by you," that email is them asking to be coached, and all I read is, "I'm probably not going to coach you unless you
Mm,
make a very strong case to earn my coach time." This is how I approach coaching. This is how I approach life. If I feel for if in a split second, if I feel like my time is not worthwhile in the moment, I'm moving right on to the next thing
hmm
because I won't waste a second on wasted time. Now, I've wasted lots of time in my life, but the moment that I recognize that I'm wasting time, I have zero concern about punching left or punching right and moving right along to the next thing. And that's why I've had a number of careers. That's why I'm, to some degree, a serial entrepreneur, as it were. That the moment that I get that sense of, okay, 15 years of coaching, it's now gone. I'm onto podcasting for the following reasons, dot, dot, dot. You've got to have that sort of conviction, I suppose, to be able to do that. But that lack of concern of, I don't know what I'm stepping into, but I know I'm a professional.
hmm
I know how I think. And so these athletes that would approach me to be coached, I would say to them, if I accepted them, right, now that you're on board, here's the deal. How you used to think just changed. You are now not an amateur anymore. Even though you're racing at an amateur level for the moment, now that we're engaged with each other, you're now a professional. You start thinking like a professional, and I'm going to show you how. And so for me, even if I'm in an amateur race, I'm acting as a professional. Same with this podcast.
Yep.
I am being a professional throughout the entire process. Doesn't mean that I've done it well or that I haven't screwed up because I've like I'm a handful. I've screwed up a bunch of things within the podcast structure, as it were, but it wasn't for lack of adopting a professional mindset. And my mindset requires me to kind of do it wrong and right and then contextualize and understand, now I see it a lot clearer. But I've got to be a little chaotic initially to create the structure that I think is going to work for us. And so professionally, I've never thought like an amateur for decades now. And so I think it's really important to be a pro in your mind, even though the outcomes may not feel pro-ish.
It's kind of funny because we had this exact same conversation when we got started.
It's
Was
true.
you were very active in telling me that this needs to be professional from the get go. So we had to figure that out, you and I, and we
We
did, and it's
have,
fantastic.
I
Yeah, and
think.
it's kind of funny though
What
because
do you think?
I think we have. I think we figured it out quite well. We've
Okay.
found a flow, and I just like I like the ideas now that of where we can go. That the podcast has become. Mm, I'm not going to say set, but we have a rhythm
It's
now,
understood process.
and we have a process that works well, that delivers on a you know by twice weekly basis, right? And we consistently deliver. So I really like that. Whereas in the beginning, there were some episodes that didn't really deliver, some that did, some that were harder, some that were easier, some that had good conversation, some that didn't. It was kind of
Mhm.
chaotic, like you're saying, and that chaos allows us to fine tune what a pro is, and then we can fine tune that even further down the lane. I really quite enjoy that. It was thinking of it made me think of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I know I can get geeky right now, but one of the alignments is called chaotic good,
All
and I
right.
think that's where I think that's where I would put you. Is you're a chaotic good character. You don't really care what the laws or what the rules are in the moment, but you have a self self-ordained kind of concept of what good is, and you're just going to work towards that. And whatever happens in the meantime
That's true.
happens.
That's
And I
true.
think that is you
That is
are.
true.
Yeah.
So how about this? I'm going to throw this. I know you got a bunch of questions, but I do want to throw this because I only wrote one thing down on my little notepad here,
Okay.
and it was based on, and of course I didn't know what any of these questions were going to be, other than the one story that you put up. And one of the questions was this: um, one challenge I'm facing that I wish I had a tool for.
Mm.
That was one of your questions that you put up.
Yep.
And so I thought about that, just for a couple of minutes. And here is my answer, but then I need to grab my little stage prop and I'll read something off to you that I did with ChatGPT. And hopefully we'll all learn from this. So, one challenge I'm facing that I wish I had a tool for, my answer is this: knowing who I am versus someone who doesn't understand me versus someone who has already labeled me. So I know who I am, okay? But the person who stands in front of me who doesn't really know me, that's for us to figure out. But then the trickiest one is someone who's already labeled me. They either
Mm.
labeled me back in the day, they either labeled me yesterday, or they're already labeling me now. Okay, that's cool. So that is my biggest struggle right now. And so let me go to Chat GPT, and I threw up a photo, and the photo was this one.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I really like
Yeah,
that.
taken down in Cardston, of course. And to me, it's representative of many things. But what I did ask Chat GPT, because this particular model that I work with has some sense of who I am and how I think and how I work problems, and a little bit about my background. Not too detailed, obviously, for
Mhm.
OPSEC, but uh, what I asked it to do was label me.
Hmm.
And so my idea of my labels is one thing, but what does the robot think? Or maybe what are other people thinking who aren't inside of me? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So here's its answer. Based on everything you've shared, your background, philosophy, and etc. Here's how I would categorize you. The category is integrated warrior philosopher, and then it breaks it down. So
Mm.
first of all, the breakdown is this: I have operator level competence in everything that I do. And I'm not going to build that out, warrior side and all of that good stuff. I have a deep intellectual curiosity and a depth unlike a typical interaction. I'm a modern day polymath, which I'll get to in a sec. You are a self-aware change agent,
Mm.
and you are a tribal elder energy without the ego. So the archetype that it told me I was, dude, it's that's the robot's words, not mine. Here's the archetype type that it called me. And hilariously, we talked about this way back in the day because you said I'm a little bit like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings,
Yep.
Strider. And I
Yep.
feel like I am. So ChatGPT says you are the modern Ronin, masterless by design, self-governed, still in service, but to truth, purpose, and those you choose to lift up. And that kind of is who I am. So that's my label of me. That's ChatGPT's label of me. But the person who stands in front of me, that is not always the way. So my biggest struggle right now is I know myself, and everyone around me that kind of can see me for what it is, they know it too.
Mhm.
But people who have labeled me as something else, they can't see beyond their label with an open heart and an open mind to actually understand who I am now. versus a year ago versus 2 years ago versus 5 years ago, and etc. And
Mm.
so the big challenge for me is that.
It the extremely hard part about this as well is that you can't really control what other people
No,
see about you, right? So as much as you can label yourself, as much as you can, try to create an external vision of who that person is, somebody else could still just label you as something else. Like you could
that's
just
right.
be the
Yeah, sure.
shorty McShort person in the room, and like, oh yeah, there's
That's
that little
right.
guy over there, right? That you could just be that
Yeah,
guy. Um, and there's the other side of this as well, is that for those that have made decisions about you based off of who you were back in the day, right? Like you said on multiple occasions, you were a skinny, underperforming kid.
that's
And
right.
somebody could have looked at that and been like, well, this guy is just a bag of hammers. And then
Yeah,
never
for sure.
updated that friggin' uh, that mindset in any way. So looking at you now, they might, and the similar things that happened to us, happened to me during the outset of the collective, where there were a lot of people who were like, oh man, that guy, based off of a thought process they had 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was not the same person I am now. So it's a struggle to, I guess I guess the real struggle is to consistently be you. And if you're consistently you, then that external vision of who you are should never change
So
drastically.
now to the crux.
The crux.
I'm gonna draw down on the internet. Anyone who's listening to this right now, I'm curious as to the idea. Not specifically about me, but about all of us. And
Hmm.
so when someone labels you, like if someone's labeled me as some old goof who doesn't know what he's talking about, it's not my job to convince them otherwise. But at the same time, actually, what you and I are doing, or the collective as a whole, is a broader reaching mission. And so if I'm just considered as the old goof who doesn't know what I'm talking about, the collective as a whole has less of an impact versus, another label. And so I don't want to like impart my labels on the world. I just want to document my life to some degree and let others decide what I am or am not. But at the same time, that doesn't quite serve the marketing department of the collective podcast
Yeah.
as well as it could to ex- expand the impact or footprint. I'm not trying to be more than I am. I'm just trying to be who I am. But at the same time, hoping that the marketing department or the PR department can somehow change the mind of the world. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that, as we've said before, the right people at the right time with the right info. I think the right people will come to the collective, and the right people at the right time will
Mm,
understand us in the right way. I
mm,
guess is the way to look at
mm.
it, because it's not up to us.
No,
And at the end of the day, as much as much thought process we want to be able to put onto it, I mean, it says right here, every moment, do your best every day. I think that's what you and I do. In the moment,
definitely.
we're just giving our best effort in what it is we're doing right now, especially in this conversation. Um, Outside of that, that's up to the people watching. That's up to the people who are going to see this in 10 years and go, oh man, that was a fantastic conversation. Who are these people? And then start to develop their labels. And I think perhaps maybe the key, and I want to ask the people out there watching right now, do you think that the key of this is then to push yourself to consistently update your labels of the people around you?
For sure. Without a
So,
doubt.
yeah, I think
And
that's
and the on that subject of labels, and you can kind of see it out there on social media right now. The labels can be self-limiting in the sense of you don't want to own who you are, and so you
yeah,
don't you use the wrong label.
yeah,
I'm just some old goof leaning against the wall with his hands in his pockets. That's not really who I am, but sometimes that's what people see. And so, but if I keep telling myself that's all I am, some old goof, then you kind of become that to some degree. You don't like try to own what you believe, which is I'm not that. I'm something else. So you have to have a certain self-labeling, but not so rigid that you can't grow out of the label. However, the flip side of that, the negative side is then you start telling yourself, okay, I'm some old goof. And also, I suffer from immense anxiety. I
Mm,
am anxiety label. And then the more you own that anxiety, the more you own that, well, I've got PTSD and so I can't walk out my house. The moment you keep telling yourself that, now you can't get out of your chair. And
yeah.
so it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want to be if you want to see your full potential, you've got to label that potential. If you want to see you at your worst, well, guess what? Label you at your worst and then own it and dig into it and like strive to be Mr. Anxiety. Your anxiety is bad. Mine's way worse. And it's going to be worse by the end of today because I'm going to beat your anxiety. I'm going to prove to you and myself that I am anxiety ridden. And
Yep.
I'm telling everyone else it. And so all of the world around us, I believe, is driven by our consideration of what we are.
Yeah. I could not agree more. And I just want to touch on some of these because there's some great comments on this. The right people around you make life enjoyable and almost easy at times. The collect that's Dave Curvin that jumped in on that one. Corbin Bobby says the collective is like quantum entanglement. The collective has achieved its unique signature. And then he says, if they labeled me, it motivates me to prove them wrong by leveling up. It's another great one. Ricky Anko jumped in here and said, the right people find the collective and stay. The ones that don't fit, don't stay, which I think are a
It's true.
beautiful point. Dom Duke jumped in and said, the human is the one of the only living creatures on the planet to have an opinion of themselves through the lens of others. Owning ourselves is what really matters. And I like that a lot.
It's a tricky one, though. It
It
is a
is.
tricky one.
Yeah. I think the understanding that we will, for many times throughout our lives, we will look at ourselves through the lens of how we interpret other people's to begin with.
I've
And so
fallen in that trap many a time.
yeah,
It's an easy trap to fall into. But I think that what is important is people hear myself say it, yourself say it, their neighbor say it, that these are real things that happen. It's not a one and doneer. You don't read a book and tell yourself like, oh, I can't fall into that mind trap. Bam, that's it for the rest of your life. Not a chance. It's going to keep happening. And I think the real key to that is when you first realize that mind trap, that obvious, impactful mind trap, you recognize it for what it is and you say, I'll never do that again. Guaranteed you're going to do it again. But what you should be doing is reducing it each time. We
yes,
all fall into mind traps, but you're supposed to recognize it in the moment and reduce it for the next moment. So you consider the mind trap and look for a tool to shave off a thin slice of it so it comes back just a bit smaller, a bit weaker, a bit thinner every time.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Corbin Bobby Johnson said the easy trap of perception in reality, which is
Mhm. Yeah,
very
it's
true. And
true.
I, uh, I'm going to do it. I've held off for an hour and 43 minutes in jujitsu. It happens
There
again.
we go.
Yeah, but I was thinking I teach this on a regular basis. And try to get my white belt students to understand is that it really it requires you to understand that right now your bandwidth is like here, and then as you start to get better, your bandwidth in terms of the what you're looking for, space to move, things like that. You need this much space to move as a white belt. As a blue belt, you need like this much space. As a purple belt, you need this much space, and it starts to get into, black belts of high degrees need millimeters in order to make a move. But it comes with the time of shaving down that trap every time you do it. Make it a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter, a little bit better. How do we get better? Blah 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 blah. And from there, so it
So anyone who heard that now has a Newtonian law of physics of understanding of BJJ, but
yeah
that's not what is being discussed right now. As you get better at things, you need less of the thing to do the thing that's required.
yeah
However, the lesson is really as a white belt, you should be learning the same as a black belt. And it's this, not the move, not the millimeters, but the who am I inside in this moment?
Yeah,
As a white belt, what you're not trying to learn is to escape. What you're trying to learn is how to escape yourself. You're trying to learn your own constraints and get them less. It's
yeah,
not about how to escape an Americana. It's about how to escape your own jail cell in your head that
for sure.
up till that point didn't understand a lot of things. And so BJJ is just a sport.
Well,
It's just a martial art. It's just a thing. You can learn all the same things that you learn in BJJ while you're making a cup of coffee.
true.
But in your head, if the jail in your head is just like I'm making some hot and brown, well, congratulations, you're a white belt in everything. But if you really understand how the game is played, then everything is a black belt moment that you should be pursuing. And so, how does a person learn that? Typically not through making coffee. How they learn it is typically on the BJJ mats.
Yeah, I was gonna say they are the it's the allegory for the larger mind changes, the larger intellectual changes, the things that we have to do in our lives.
But
It's a
that I
physical
bet
representation of it,
I bet as
but
a
not
purple
everybody sees
belt
it.
coach, you haven't explained that in that
I have
way.
not in that way, but I will now.
Oh,
So
that's right. That's
there we
my job
yeah,
to
well, and
to to inject that, and now it's your job to freaking flourish it and explain it better than I did.
absolutely, and this is exactly what we're talking about in terms of I have a mind trap of what I have done before. That was my label. This is what I've said. You have given me a little tool that I can shave that off for next time.
Maybe a brown
And I'm
belt
gonna
inject.
maybe a brown belt inject. We'll see what happens with that one. Dom Duke's laughing. BJJ, absolutely. He says self-awareness creates self-regulation, which is, I think, accurate. We have to know yourself before you can regulate anything. He says the mindset of a black belt, which applies in everyday life, and that is 100% true. There was a thing I missed on here a little while ago. I just wanted to touch back on. Ali jumped in and said, "Sure did." To the wives with little cheers. Dan Cameron says, "Took me 3 times, but she's the best." It's absolutely true. And then Gordon Bobby says, "We are all over the maps, guys. Our wives keep us in alignment." And so I wanted to touch on keeping us in alignment because I don't think it's just about the wives, not just about the people, but it's we have to seek alignment because we could easily rely on that person to just be like, oh yeah, this person keeps me in check. But without us needing or wanting someone there to keep us in check in that regard, it would just be a nagging show. Like somebody would just be harping at us and we wouldn't really care that much. So I wanted to ask you on who maintains your alignment outside of yourself, because I know you do. But
Mhm.
who do you who do you lean on when you need some alignment?
So, I think again to get some context, as ChatGPT labeled me, and as I have kind of to some degree throughout my life self-labeled myself, is I am a Ronin, man. I always have been, and so it's not enough to self-label I'm a Ronin. It's my job to go see if I am. That's why for well over a decade, in absence of anyone's awareness, I traveled the world seeking what I sought. I wanted to speak to the gurus. I wanted to speak to the guy who was levitating off the ground 6 feet. I wanted to be on a mountain staring out at soaring eagles and standing next to some guy who's explaining to me not just how they soar, but why they soar. My path, my personal path as a Ronin, I wanted to expose myself to things that maybe people don't seek. And so through that journey, I came to understand myself and the world a little bit better for Sean. Now, I brought all of that back and introduced myself to kind of a world that operates the way it does. And I met my wife in frickin' Peru of all places. And so that moment was a game changer for me. I just didn't know it. Like I didn't know what my future would be with Doreen. Like we briefly met, and then I went on with my international security consulting task that I was in Peru for, and she went off on vacation with her friends, and like she went left and I went right. And we didn't contact each other until quite some time later because we couldn't swap IG call signs because they didn't exist. And so the moment had no value when I first met her, unless I'd have been paying attention to the moment. Years later, we've been married for over 20 years now. Like, if I wouldn't have felt what I felt or seen what I saw, then none of this would exist. I wouldn't have kids. I wouldn't have this house. I wouldn't be scratching my dog's ear, all that stuff. So is life a coincidence? Is it a number of things that just keep happening and somehow it all works out? Or is life opportunities? Every single second is an opportunity that you have to intentionally consider and say, Darth Vader or Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi, every second of the day trying to make the best decision with what the universe puts in front of your nose. So my wife is a big part of that, but so are my friends. And so when I was out at Cardston, the idea of why we're here, our sense of existence, what's it all about? Well, Seb was a big part of the week, listening to the things that Seb had to say while we were doing the book, and then after we had recorded the chapter, just sitting back and talking freely about that. Like, you've got to have people in your life that you can just trust and accept the wisdom that they've gained over the years. So, as a guy, I have sought people who are wiser than I. This week, hilariously, for me, is I think people have got it flippity flopped. When I went out to Cardston, I was there to do a thing, a book. But while I was there were people who were coming into my life that I had no idea they were going to show up. And I'm looking at them like, how how did I get in this position where people that I look up to or people that I have high regard for, people that I want to hang out with, and I never thought I would, bam, there they are. And so I think the sign of a good life to some degree is you do your best and better people show up.
Yeah.
I need to be wrapped around with people as a team that are make me feel like I don't belong there, which is more often the case. It's not that I show up and feel like I own the moment. I feel like I show up and I have to demonstrate that I deserve to be in the moment, not just to everyone around, but to me.
Yeah.
When I show up in Cardston, I got to earn my seat at the table. Even if I hand carved the table, that isn't the important part. The moment I sit down, I'm in the game to win it with the team.
Yeah. I could not agree more with that. And so we got about 8, 9, 10 minutes left. If there's any other thoughts or anything like that, by all means, hit them up in the comments. We can hit on them before we shut her down. But to that point, there was a moment, and Seb just kind of like drove a dagger in all of our hearts when we were sitting at the table, and he was saying grace, and he was talking about how this particular collection of people will probably never happen again.
That's right.
And to really engage in the moment and be thankful and have gratitude for that moment. Like I said, we had Ash there, who I have not seen since I retired back in 2013. That was the first time I got to actually hang out with him in person since then. The Nick, I got to meet for the first time, even though we've had him on the collective and I've been following him for a little while. You and Seb and I have not been in the same place since 2022 with the original Pegasus jump.
That's right.
And to have that collection, and I mean, having Alex there, and just like it was just such a moment in time.
It was.
That
I
we
haven't been
could
able
have,
to get it out of my head.
like, we could have easily just let that slide and just be
He could
thankful
have
for the
easily
dinner, and
just
he
let
could
that
have just let
slide.
it slide. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it was just the whole day being able to do, for me especially, being able to ride horses in the morning and then go get a bunch of podcast gear, set up a show, sit down and have a conversation, and then and then have that dinner and then watch the fights. Like, it was just, and the conversations were constantly going and people were engaged and everybody was doing stuff. And it was an amazing moment that could have very easily been brushed over. And to your point though, being surrounded by people that always want better for not themselves, not just themselves, but those around them, and want to earn their seat at the table. I think every single person at that table was thinking the same thing. Like, man, I need to earn this moment.
Yeah.
It was a heck of
And,
a moment.
the photo of I'm wearing my collective T-shirt. I'm wearing
Yep.
this hat, and I got the mountain in the background. I stood intentionally and took that 10-second self timer photo because I wanted to consider it days later. I've been considering it this morning as to what it represents. And so I like in that moment, I'm not trying to represent Sean. I'm trying to do it right for the team. And so like if you think back, Chance, to your military career, in any moment that you were wearing a uniform, I think it can go back and forth to some degree that you're trying to represent yourself, like I'm trying to do my best and all
Yep.
that good stuff. But even in my young mind, when I was a young buck in my 20s, when I put on a uniform, it was me representing the greatness that came before me and the
Yep.
greatness that I needed to demonstrate right now because I was surrounded by freaks who just expected nothing less of me, even if I didn't believe it myself. So you throw on the uniform and then you have to become it.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, you've just gotta. So when I threw on that t-shirt, I was like, man, this is almost like a self-created dream right now. The whole collective thing, that
Yep.
stupid little inkling in my head, like, let's freaking go, let's get guests, let's do all of that stuff. That's kind of self-created. But even in its creation, as I stand there in that moment, it's hard to accept that this was self-created. And
Mhm.
so there is a real there's a there's a real pull on me when I in those moments where I think I don't deserve to be there, but I freaking created the there. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I do. It is there have been some moments in my life, and uh when I was in basic, I had a instructor that hit me with a line that stuck with me throughout all of my time and even to today. And it
Mm,
was he would yell this when we were doing drill, and he was always chin up, chest out, thumbs breast pocket high, be proud of who you are and what you are a part of.
yes.
And that just stuck with me throughout everything. And so, like you said, when I put that uniform on, it was be proud of who you are and what you're a part of. And that was the key element. And so there was a transfer from that to each aspect of my life that I've been utilizing now for the last couple of years. Since I had to get tuned up by a couple of people, including you, and being proud of who I am and what I am a part of at the same time, I think is so important. And this every day, when I can get down on myself and I can whine about scheduling or friggin' whatever, or having to run the shows or do all the comments or whatever, all the stuff. But man, am I proud to be a part of this. And I'm proud
Yeah,
of
sure.
myself for
You
being
should
here
be. Of
and the
course, of
work that I
course.
put in to do that. Like, it is just um it's something that we can take for granted very easily, but we need to constantly be aware of and constantly be working towards so that we can earn that seat so that we can be proud of what we're doing.
Well, the seat is that's an important little detail filled moment, the granularity of what you just said. The seat is you can sit your arse on it and it's just a seat.
Yeah.
But it's what the seat represents while being closely attached to a standard.
Yeah.
And so back in the day when that guy was talking about, your thumbs and the height and all of that good stuff, he wasn't talking about how to march. He was talking about the expectation of what is the bare minimum standard.
Yeah.
And so throughout the show, our standard is being as high as we can demand of ourselves. So the standard is the standard, and there will be no slippity sliding backwards. And if anything I learned as a warrant officer, it's this: never pass a fault. as, as we laughed about on the couch, yourself, Ash,
Oh
and
man.
I, never
Yeah.
pass a fault. And so, how much are you willing to give away in the moment to just laziness or comfort? There's a standard, man. Meet the standard, and now you can get a seat at the table.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could not agree more with that. I got a couple more comments I want to touch on, and then I got a final question, and then I think we can wrap it up for the day. But this has just been a fantastic conversation. So first off, thank you. It's worked out
Thank you.
beautifully. Corbin Bobby jumped in. He said, "The collective truly assists me, aside of myself, analyzing my own alignment, and all the people that I surround myself with are aiming for higher consciousness and just good old people who are highly positive about life, who hang around with you, and who you will become." Which I really enjoy
Solid.
that. Rick Yanko said, "Lots of giants at Deb's house for sure." And then everyone's here is working several hours though. Sorry. He goes, Dan Cameron jumped in here and said, 100%. I remember the days I thought I'm done in Cornwallis. And then I just think your uncle and granddad are watching you.
That's good.
Like, that would snap you real fast.
Yeah,
Back
yeah,
into
sure.
correction. Corbin Bobby says, Chance, those words stick like crazy glue. They absolutely have. I've never forgotten them. Checking and correcting. Absolutely. So the question we have from Chris K, we have not seen in a while. Chris, man, good to
Right.
see you. He says, how did you move from work focus to doing some IG each day? Most people are like myself and can only concentrate on one thing at a time. When I go to the cabin to write, I never check my phone, which is, this is, the phone is a tool, right? And this is the hard part, is that it can become a crutch pretty quickly. So what do you think?
So I'll go back to the Cardston moment. As I said, comms weren't great for my personal cell phone, as it were, and it was the last night, so night 9, as it were. We just finished like a friggin' bonkers workload, and I was just on the couch, and there was people there, and dinner was getting set up, and I said, I just need a moment just to do a quick back and forth with Doreen. Oh, how's she doing? I said, I don't know, because this is the first time that I'm communicating with my wife after 9 days to let her know when I'm going to be coming home.
Yeah.
So, you know, the distraction of the phone was was not part of my life during that time in Cardston, because I was target locked, mission focused. I knew what the important reason for me being there was, and therefore everything is secondary. And so it's not that my wife is secondary, because as I've already said, I know she's got it. She'd sent me a photo several days prior of her sitting on a bus with our youngest son Keegan as he came back from pre-med. She was sitting on a bus, an hour and a half ride, just sitting with him next to a bus window, and they're both smiling and waving. And that's the only thing that I saw that entire 10 days was my wife freaking smashing, my son freaking smashing on public transpo in the middle of the mountains, making it happen. And
Yeah.
so my distractions are non-existent. I know someone's got my 6 o'clock. It's my family. And I know all I have to do is keep my eyes locked on the prize and smash. And so don't need to check my phone for that kind of stuff. I think that's the only answer I've got, really.
Yeah. I would only add to this is that the key is to understand that when you're doing one thing at a time, do one thing at a time. This is where we get caught up, is that, oh, well, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this. It's, if I'm on the phone doing something, I am on the phone doing something. If I'm here on the show, I am here on the show. If I am making a coffee, I am making a coffee. I'm not checking my phone and making a coffee. I'm doing one thing at a
Mhm.
time. So I think this is how I move from work to play to family to anything, is that what I'm doing, I am doing. And I've learned that through the show, that like I never used to do that. I used to let myself get wrapped up in, I got 17 things to do. And I used to have this constant concept of being busy as a, almost like a badge of honor. Like, oh yeah, I got so
Yeah.
much stuff happening,
I'm
right?
so busy with Candy
So
Crush
busy
right
with,
now.
oh man, you have no idea. Yeah, exactly. Um, But now I don't feel busy, even though I am. I still have lots to do. But when I move from one thing to the other, um, it's actually kind of funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Is that when I get on and off the mats, I always give a little bow, get on off those mats. But there's a little mental bow now. Anytime I move from one thing to the other,
Oh, nice.
right? I have a little check, like, okay, now we're here.
Check.
Okay, now we're there, right?
Roger that. I dig.
Yeah, it works quite nicely. Now, that's all I got for questions. That's all I got for comments. I just want to say thank you to everybody, all the questions, all the comments. This has been a great conversation. It's been a while since we've done one of these little Q&As, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I think we might have to make this a bit of maybe
Okay,
a
so
monthly
just a
special.
sec. How about this? Just to kind of wrap things up, because I don't think we're
Yeah,
going to do any final thoughts.
for sure.
But let me throw a little pro tip out there for anyone. The moment that we end any podcast, every single podcast since we first started having guests, we step into the green room, which no one can see. And that's just Chance and I looking at each other talking, or the guests that we have on the show. We're all in a green room where we continue talking. But one of the first things Chances says is, okay, do you have any points? Let's move straight into an after action report. And we then look for ways to improve the show. So, what you're seeing right now is the result of hundreds of iterations of that after action report. Is that not true?
That's 100% accurate. Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Let's do an AAR. Chance, how do you think it went?
I think it went quite well. I was a little hesitant because we haven't done this in quite a while, and I was a little concerned about the 24-hour time span between when I said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do," and having questions and um, having all the comments. But it was a different style. It was a little challenging for me to manage all the stuff and try to engage with everybody. Um, I'd give myself I think maybe like an 80%, like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I
I think
kind
that
of
was
got you at an 8 out of 10. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. What about
yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, I think I'm not going to evaluate my performance because no one would believe the number that I throw out because it'd be really low because of my self-described imposter syndrome. But I'll say this: um, my perspective is that it was a good show for sure, and as I was observing what we were going back and forth, I can easily say that we've really grown throughout the last couple of years to be able to
Oh yeah.
do this kind of thing. And irrespective of how many people see this or how many people learn from it, or maybe they get dumber, I don't know. I can say this 100% money on the table. You and I are better at it, and you and I are going to get better at it. So as the days progress, as the weeks and months and years unfold, I feel really confident that whatever we target lock as the mission directive in the near or mid future, it's freaking going to happen, man. I The moment that we agree on the aligned structure immediately in front of our nose, I know it's done, and that's an important part when you're kicking ass. You need a partner who you believe, who you trust, who you respect enough to go kick that ass hard. And, in the early days, you didn't have my vote of confidence.
It's absolutely true.
I'm
Yep.
just saying,
Yep.
I'm keeping it real.
Absolutely.
But a long time ago, whatever that means to anyone else, I changed my mind. And now I've got like zero doubt. Like it, we've gone through so many AARs together that the public isn't aware of, that AARs have put us in this moment. So my final thought, if we were going to do one, would be this. I think that everyone needs to AAR their daily on the daily.
Yeah. I could not agree more with that one. I'm going to ask you, the people out there watching right now, what do you think? I want to know, what can we do better? These are the two questions I ask at every AR. What can we do better, and was there anything we missed? So those are the two things I want to ask you guys. And before I shut her down, I missed a question very early on that I
Oh,
want to touch
okay.
on.
Let's
Okay,
see.
went all the way back to the beginning from Tyler Pelkey. He said, "When will the first collective retreat take place?"
Well, it already occurred kind of like in Cardston just last week, and it was unbeknownst to me.
Yeah.
When will the next one occur? Oh, that's a
Yes.
great question, isn't it?
The big official one. That'll be
Mm.
a tough one. And while we're thinking about that, while we were talking, I thought that your ChatGPT post was something that I really want to touch on. I did something similar. Took one of your photos you took of me when I was at the table, and I asked the same thing to ChatGPT. What, based on what you know about me and the attached photo, how would you label me? And I got labeled back the grounded warrior philosopher.
Mm. Are you
Mm,
grounded?
right now I am. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When was the when was the last time you weren't?
When was the last time I wasn't grounded?
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. I would say last week actually when I wasn't grounded. And there was a moment and because I recognized I wasn't grounded, I was able to then ground myself. But
Nice.
we were in the car, we were driving to Drumheller, my wife and the boys and I, and there was a moment there where I was I was in my own head. I was upset about, oh man, we're late. We haven't got the timings. We still need to get here, and that stuff needs to happen. The kids are making noise, and no, and like I was everywhere else except for in that moment in that car. And I recognized that I was like, you know what? Timing's A. No one's dying. we had said we'd be at a place at a certain time, and we were going to be close, but it wasn't going to be on time. So that's not the end of the world. We're going to get there when we get there. And then I stopped and realized that the noises that the boys were making were pages being turned. Was they were reading in the back quietly while we were driving. My wife was doing the same thing on beside me, and the sun was shining, and the roads were open, and I was like, man, let's just sit right here, and right back to that moment. So yeah, that
Well, that's
last
good.
moment of yeah,
That's good because these labels that we give ourselves have to be based on the reality of consistency.
yeah.
It can't be a one a week. I'm a grounded super warrior. It can't be. Hey,
It's
listen for
true.
the
It's
internet.
absolutely true.
Maybe we can wrap it up with this.
With this, yeah.
So last time I saw Chancy Boy, he had stick arms and a spoon chest, and he showed up this week with some freaking cronkalicious biceps and actually a big old barrel chest to some degree. And so, the idea that there's an inner world that we all need to see, but there's an outer or an external outcome world that we need to see. And the work that you've done, I can see better than most. As to your internal work, very few get to see that. But the external work still has to exist.
Yep.
And you're exhibiting your external work. So, I can't call you a stick arm boy anymore. So that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. And it's funny, I used to be 220, and I was heavy and I didn't like the way I looked. And now I'm 220 and I like the way I look and I feel good about it. Like all the
Not
weight
just how
came
you
from
look, but how you
how I
feel.
feel. Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I feel really good. All right. Last couple comments here, and then we can shut her down for the day. Corbin Bobby jumped in and said, thank you, Chance and Sean. We are glad to be part of the collective evolution. We are one.
I
So
like it.
yeah. And then Dom Duke says, thank you for sharpening our blades. Some human dolls, human dolls are blades. Are some humans dull our blades? There we go. But the collective definitely sharpens our blade to be sharp. The blades need rough love.
Mhm. Consider
Very
me a whetstone.
You definitely are. Maybe 60 grit sandpaper. I'll give you 120 grit. Let me put it that
It's
way.
my way.
There you go. All right. Anything else before we shut her down?
No, buddy. Good combo though.
Yeah, absolutely. I really, really enjoyed it. So as I guess you and I continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see everybody next week.
Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.